What is up, PreMed stars? It's Dr. Dale, the author of How to Raise a Doctor and the author of PreMed Mondays, and you are listening to the PreMed Mondays Mentoring Podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about 5 signs you need a tutor. Sometimes it's hard to know when you need help. I'm going to give you some tips. Check it out. Happy Monday, PreMed Star. Another great week coming around. I know for us last week, it was super rainy, just tons of rain. So I'm looking forward to the sun coming out this weekend. I'm just going to keep that vision in my mind of a sunny, bright week ahead. So I'm hoping that you guys have that same vision, positivity. It's going to be a great week, all right? So we're going to talk about 5 signs that you need a tutor, okay? And this is a difficult topic for some people because a lot of people just don't want to admit that they need a tutor. Just don't want to admit that you might need some help. And here's something I write in the book, okay? So if you have the hard copy of the book, we're on page 55. And I say this: if you remember nothing else from this letter, remember this: pride always comes before the fall. Remember that. Pride always comes before the fall. I have met tons of students whose grades just aren't up to par, yet they refuse to get a tutor and always think that they can do it on their own. Pride comes before the fall, okay? So this is a serious chapter, and I'm going to give you some tips to know whether or not you need a tutor. Some of them might catch you off guard, but pay attention. If you fall in these categories, take heed to what I'm saying, okay? This is some solid advice. This is gold, okay? So take heed to it and really think about it, okay? All right, so let's get right into it, okay? The first one, number 1, you might need a tutor if you have a B or below in a class. Yes, you heard that right. I said if you have a B or below. I didn't say C. I didn't say D. I didn't say F. I said if you have a B or below in a class. Now, if you're going to some other field, a B might be good. And a B is not a bad grade at all, right? So a B is good. A B is perfectly fine. But the truth of the matter is, you want to be a doctor. You want to be a medical doctor. And there are 50,000 plus other pre-medical students who are going to be applying to med school when you apply. And they want to be doctors too. And we all know that grades matter, right? So take the guy with the A, take the guy with the B. I know a lot more goes into it. We're in holistic review, right? But still, grades matter. And an A gives you more points than getting a B, okay? So if you have a B or below in a class, you might want to consider getting a tutor to bump you up into that A group, right? So here's my thought on this. And I talked about this a little bit last week. This is just my 2 cents on this. If you have a B and you can afford a tutor, or you're at a school that tutors are free. I went to University of Missouri. When I was there, they had free tutoring programs. If you have a B, why not go to somebody who's going to help you turn that B into an A? What do you have to lose? You have nothing to lose. What do you have to gain? A whole point in your GPA. It's going to take you from a 3.0 to a 4.0 for that class. That's a big deal. So why not do that? I'll tell you why not. The reason people don't do it is because of pride. It's because you just don't want to admit that you might need a tutor for a class. And, here's what I say to that. If you ever B, you don't need a tutor for anything. So just throw that out the way. Don't feel like, I needed a tutor. So throw that out the window. You're getting a tutor because you're being smart and you're thinking ahead. You're being wise. That's what that is. That's being wise. And let me go back to what I just said again. So let's say if you have an F in a class or something like that, and you do need a tutor, again, the fact that you can recognize you need a tutor is being wise. Go get the tutor. The best people in this world at whatever it might be. So anything, think about something. Think about, and again, we touched on this last week a little bit, but think about sports. Go back to basketball. LeBron James. He's had basketball trainers growing up, right? Kobe Bryant. Basketball trainers. The best players in the world have trainers. Those trainers essentially are tutors. These are the best players in the world, and those guys still have people who are training them, helping them get to where they're trying to go to. So it would only make sense that in reality, people who make A's probably would still benefit from having tutors. In a sense, if you think about it, so when I was a pre-medical student, I went to office hours on a somewhat regular basis. I made good grades, so I didn't necessarily go get a tutor from our tutoring service because they wanted you to have a certain grade in order to offer these free services. That's my recollection of it, at least. So I used my professor's office hours. So essentially, I had a tutor who was my professor. I would go there one-on-one, get all this advice, and get all this tutoring and make sure I'm firm on the concepts. And I would get that. And that helped me stay on top with academically. That helped me keep my great grades and do those things because I was getting that one-on-one individual guidance. So if you don't have a B, if you do have a B or below in a class, really, really consider getting a tutor. It's not just for individuals who might be making a C or a D. If that's not an A, strongly consider getting a tutor. I think that's the hardest one for me to get through, which is why I spent a little bit more time on it. Because people say, oh, my grades are good. I'm making all B's. Well, hey, you're trying to go to med school. So try to make all A's. I know it's difficult. I know most people aren't going to be able to do that. But set your goals high. So if you miss it, you'll still be up there. Just set those goals high. Be courageous. Just go for it. Don't shortchange yourself. And when you go for it, give all you got. And giving all you got sometimes means going out there, finding the right people and resources to help you get there. And in many situations, that will be a tutor. All right. So let's go to number 2. Number 2 is you are spending too much time studying for a single subject. You're spending too much time studying for a single subject. And here's what I say on page 56. In certain situations, even though you may be doing well in a particular class, you could be spending too much time studying for that subject. So I want you to think about it in that light, okay? This in turn takes away from the time you study for other courses. So you say, hey, Dr. Dale, I've got an A in that class. Yeah, you got an A in that class, but you're spending 80% of your time studying for that one class. And because you're doing that, it might be hindering you in another class. Or because you're doing that, it might be taking away from your ability to excel in some extracurriculars that you could do or that you need. So you might not be getting any time to shadow or not getting to participate in your clubs and organizations because you're spending all of your time studying for a class. Whereas if you were to go get a tutor, your tutor might be able to show you how to figure some of these concepts out a lot quicker. And that might cut your study time down in half. There might be some mnemonics out there. There might be some nice little cheat sheets that are circulating to give people, quick hints on how to memorize stuff or just high yield fact sheets. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of tutors have this stuff. So if you're bogged down just studying for this one class all the time, first of all, let me commend you on that. It's good that you would invest that time to make sure you do a good job at it. But consider, hey, maybe somebody else can show me how to study for it so I don't have to spend as much time studying for it. It'll free me up to excel in other areas. All right, let's go to number 3. Number 3 is straightforward, simple, and it is your professor recommends it. So you need a tutor if your professor recommends it. Somebody says, if my teacher would have told me, hey, Dale, I think you need a tutor for organic chemistry, you're not doing so hot, that's a pretty good sign you need a tutor. And even if you feel like, hey, I can bring it up on my own, I know what I did, I messed up on that last test because X, Y, and Z reasons, even if you feel that when you think you can correct the problem by yourself, the mere fact that your professor asked you to do it should be enough motivation for you to actually consider going out and getting a tutor. And here's the thing. When you go out and get the tutor, make sure you let the professor know, because then they're going to be like, oh, wow, this student really wants to improve. This student wants to do well. They're taking my advice. And people feel good when you take their advice. It makes them feel good. It makes them feel like they have value, something to offer. So if your professor recommends it, definitely consider it. All right, number 4, you don't have a deep understanding of the material. And this is another key one, right? So as a pre-medical student, you're going to be taking a lot of classes. And you might be doing well. You might be getting an A in the class. But I'll tell you this from personal experience. I made an A in my classes, but I didn't always have a deep understanding of the material. And as a student, as somebody in college, you want to master the material. You want to get the deep understanding because when you get to med school, a lot of what you're learning right now as a pre-med is going to be the same stuff you're learning in med school. And you want to make sure you have that solid foundation. So when you're in medical school, it's easy for you to start, just get the ball rolling. You don't want to be trying to play catch up and thinking, oh, what was this again? How did I do that? When you start med school, you want to say, oh yeah, boom, I mastered this in undergrad. I remember exactly what this is. Glycolysis, boom, I've got that down. Electron transport chain, boom, I've got that down. Anything you learn in all biochemistry, all those classes that you're going to do again in med school, medical microbiology, you want to make sure you've got these things down. So if you don't have a solid understanding of the material, consider getting a tutor. It's okay to get a tutor just to help make sure your foundation is strong. And again, I really push this because I know a lot of campuses offer free tutoring services. So take advantage of these things. Because once you're out of college in the real world, you got to pay for these things, right? You have to pay for these things. So I have 3 kids now. When I think about my kids and my kids are young, but people get tutors for your kids young nowadays. These things are expensive. So while you're in college, it's free. They're not charging you for it. Take advantage. It's going to help you. All right. Really help you. Number 4, you're repeating the class. I think this is kind of like number 3. Number 3 was your professor recommends it. That's pretty self-explanatory. Number 5, you're repeating the class. If you're repeating the class, pretty self-explanatory that you should probably get a tutor. You don't want to be, repeating the class and then repeating that class again because you still didn't figure out how to get through it the right way. All right. So if you need to repeat a class, get a tutor. And I don't want you to put too much thought into that one at all. Do not try to talk yourself out of it. Just say, hey, I didn't do well in this class. I first go around from the get-go off the bat. I'm getting a tutor because I want to make sure I excel in it this time around. Okay. All right. So my challenge to you this week is to look up various tutoring services and their associated cost. Very simple. Just look up various tutoring services and their associated costs. Even if you don't need a tutor right now, just look it up so you have a general idea because you might need one later. And if you don't need one later, my hope is all of you at some point will become mentors. So you want to have that information ready so you can help other people and tell them, hey, I looked up tutoring services last year. And this is kind of what you can expect from a price standpoint. Okay. All right. So let's see what we're getting into next week. Next week, we are going to be covering 5 ways to maximize self-study. Good deal right there. That's some good stuff. Very important. You need to know how to maximize your self-study. So next week, 5 ways to maximize self-study. All right, guys, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Also subscribe to the PreMed Voice podcast. Some great stuff on that podcast. Last week's episode was really good. They talked about the Casper, which honestly I didn't know anything about. So Peyton had Melancheth and Lauren Kansaki on last week, and they discussed the Casper test, which a lot of medical schools are starting to use. So definitely check out last week's episode if you missed it. That's something you're going to need to know if you're applying to medical school, all right? So check it out. They break it down to tell you what it is. There's just excellent information. So subscribe to that podcast on iTunes and Google. Definitely subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever it is you use to listen to podcasts. Share the podcast, tell a friend, and give me feedback. If you have any questions, go ahead and give me some feedback on it. Send me a message on PreMed Star, and I'm more than happy to take your feedback. And I want to improve. I want to make sure this podcast is meeting your needs. And the goal here is to be an excellent development podcast for pre-medical students. We want to help develop you guys. That's why we do this. All right. Love you guys. You know where to find me, PreMedStar.com. And I will see you next week.